There is a lot to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not referring to the Azerbaijan qualifying for this weekend's Formula One Grand Prix. No, I'm talking about week one of the NFL season, because that's what we do here on the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, your favorite NFL podcast for the last 119 episodes. Oh, 200 is so close, and yet so far. But before we get to that point, it's time for us to talk about week one of this season. And there's so much to talk about, we're probably going to miss. We're probably going to miss a couple of things, but we're going to do the best we can here on this program. The troublesome triumvirate is here as we talk football once again. Myself, the Iceman, introing us in. I'm done with the intro, basically. So I just want to bring in my compatriots of chaos, as always. At the top of the screen with me, our games master himself, the leader of the standings for this season after week one, if I'm not mistaken. Justin, how we doing?
Okay. I mean, wouldn't be the first time I led after week one. That's not the issue here.
Exactly. It doesn't matter who wins after the first one. It matters who's leading at the very end. But Justin putting himself in a decent position right now. And at the bottom of the screen, this man rants. This man brings mind-blowing facts. This man helps bring puppets to life. And this man took a pill as well, and still lost every prediction last week. I was almost there with him, to be honest. The Podfather at the bottom of the screen. Rick, how we doing?
I had to go back and look. Yeah, Justin, you led after week one last year. So, I mean, harbinger of things to come, maybe. I don't know.
Who led after week one 2 years ago is what I'm wondering.
There was a three-way tie between you, me, and the mascot, because Justin had 1 point 2 years ago after week one.
You
know what? I will say this: 1 point 2 years ago, 7 points last year, 8 this year, steadily climbing. You know,
and it equals perfectly. 1 + 7 is 8. So
yeah, there you go. Works out perfectly for you. This could be the year.
Could it be the year? Will this be the magical ride that we expect it to be? But the self-aggrandizing aside, guys, we are back here for another fun week of football to talk about. And I mean, we call ourselves Sports Agents of Chaos for a reason, because there was a lot of chaos to be had in week one of this season. So much to unpack. We're probably going to miss some stuff, which if we do, apologies, but I mean, hopefully we'll talk about your team later in the season. It's just like, it's always difficult to squish 16 games, 32 teams in there. So we're going to do our best to talk about the biggest things that happened throughout that week. And of course, per usual, we have to talk a little bit about the Thursday night game, although not much of the game itself to talk about, aside if you may have sat Devon A-Chain in fantasy, you're struggling right now. Yes, I too am hurting about that, because the lineup locked me out at the very last minute before I could put him in. But there is more news of that to talk about, because a quarterback got injured in that game. Betting lines on who you think it got hurt, if you still don't know the news, it's heavily favored in one way over the other. We'll be talking about that, as well as, of course, our #SAOC pick challenge. We enter week 2 of the proceedings, and we'll see how all of us go this week. And then, of course, we end things off, per usual, on a weekly basis with the Rant Podium. But before we get to all of that, let's blow the people's minds with a mind-blowing fact. Podfather, take the floor.
This is going to be the weirdest one yet, I think.
That says a lot.
I know, right? We've been talking about a lot of different things. So I want to keep this football related, but we're going to talk about a different league of football. We're going to talk about the Arena League, which had its debut season this year from June until August of this year, 2024. The Arena League is basically a 6-on-6 indoor football league, kind of like AFL, all the other leagues you see. However, it was a site of two of maybe the most odd things you could ever see in football in general. And they both involved the same team with a really interesting name and a really interesting head coach, who almost pulled off the greatest heist in arena football and football history. So the Arena League started this year in 2024 with 4 teams. Those 4 teams were, and I love this, because this is the part where we're going to have some fun with some great names. The Ozarks Lunkers, the Kansas City Goats, the Duluth Harbor Monsters, and the stars of our show this week, the Iowa Woo! Yes, named after the Ric Flair taunt, also set in the city of Waterloo, Iowa, where Dan Gable has a wrestling school, and also named after the sound that a train whistle makes in the passage by. You know, woo, woo, all that fun stuff. The Iowa Woo were coached by, and I'm not making this up, a former D3 football player who only played one season at Anna Maria University, 2 games, and recorded 2 tackles and a fumble recovery, but then went on to play in pro football overseas. His first name is LaRon, but everyone calls him Mook. Yes, Mook Zimmerman, the head coach of the Iowa Woo this season. So, the Woo were terrible. They were an awful, awful team this year. And they ended the year actually with a 1-7 record through their 9-week season. They had a week off. But again, remember, all the teams, since there's 4, they all make the playoffs. So the Iowa Woo were going into this season, postseason rather, as the number 4 seed, facing the number 1 seed, the Kansas City Goats, who the week before had played what's known as an inside-out game. And let me tell you what that is. Essentially, an arena football team playing football at an outdoor stadium, because their old stadium they couldn't get contract for week 9 in the playoffs, so they played at a football stadium at a Catholic high school in their area, St. Pius X. Well, the postseason game also took place at St. Pius X football stadium, and the Kansas City Goats, who were the number 1 seed, mind you, with a final record of 7-1, lost by a point to the Iowa Woo, which meant that a team that went 1-7 during the regular season was 1 win away from taking home the Arena League inaugural championship. They played the team that they had defeated earlier in the year, the Duluth Harbor Monsters, in Minnesota. And the final score of that game was Duluth 46, Iowa 44. They almost pulled off what would be the greatest heist and the end of that league in one season, because you cannot come back from having your league won by a team that won 1 stinking game during the regular season. Impossible to do that. So we almost had it. Almost had it. And for a fun little reference here, in week 2, Iowa played Kansas City, and Iowa was the home team, lost 91-56. So they were not a good team. And then all of a sudden, last 2 weeks of the year, postseason, they almost ran away with the whole damn thing.
Well, they can seemingly score a little bit, Rick.
Yeah, it goes to show you that arena leagues, they can get a little crazy.
Yeah, they could score. They just can't play defense.
No, they can't play defense at all. And I mean, it's funny because like I've seen negative opinions about this. I didn't mind the Arena Bowl between Billings and Albany that was at the American Dream Mall in the Meadowlands. I didn't mind that. It was a unique way to kind of play that final game. I thought it was a kind of fun. I know people hated it because they're like, "Oh, I'm going to the mall getting an Auntie Anne's bucket of cinnamon sugar pretzels. I'm going to watch the Arena Bowl right there in the middle of the mall." Like, really? Like, I didn't mind it. It was fun. It was cool. So, like I said, the Arena League, craziness.
Clearly. I don't think this will be the last time we get an Arena League fact, to say the very least. I'm sure if he goes digging, Rick will find another one to give us in a couple weeks' time. But
I do have another mind-blowing fact for you. This is Tang, by the way.
There we go. So double mind-blowing fact this week. Of course, the main one being the Arena League. Thank you, as always, Podfather, doing the research that no one else thinks to do. But that's why he's the man on this podcast, ladies.
Probably a good reason no one thinks to do it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you know what? Fair point. Anyways, as we finish with that, we continue with our fun here at the start of it, and we go to our games because it's time for another rendition of everyone's favorite Name That Player.
If y'all couldn't tell, this is my new favorite game. This is I love finding these people out. And so we're going to start with some career stats for this nameless player. This player, during his 9-year NFL career, averaged over 800 yards rushing and a little over 7 touchdowns a game.
9-year career, 800 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns a game. Or 7 touchdowns a season. Imagine he got 7 a season, 7 a game.
Ooh.
7 a game would put you in the Hall of Fame.
It will. It definitely will.
Even just one season of that will get you in the Hall.
Interesting start. Right.
9-year career, 800 yards rushing per season average, 7 touchdowns a season average. I'm trying to think of NFL running backs with 9-year careers specifically. That's such a. I mean, it's literally an odd number. 9 is an odd number, but you know what I mean.
All right. I think I have a guess,
Okay.
and I don't think it's a correct one. But I mean, when you have running backs, you can throw whoever you want basically in there. So, thank you, Marion Barber.
Ooh, that's a good name. No.
Okay.
That is not correct.
Running backs that played just 9 seasons. See, there's one or two guys that came to mind, but I think the both of them played more than 9 seasons. And as a matter of fact, I think they probably averaged more than it. Well, maybe not. I will say, and again, I think I'm underselling because I think he played way past the 9 season mark. But Steven Jackson, the former Ram.
Ooh, that is also a very good pull. It is not Steven Jackson. I think Steven Jackson played 10 seasons.
Ah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I just remember doing a little bit of research.
And didn't he randomly go to like Atlanta at the end of his career? If I'm
He
not
did.
wrong?
I think so. Yeah.
He did. All right. So coming from his hometown of North Chicago, Illinois, where he lettered in 2 sports, I believe, including football. He was also a track and field star.
As one does.
Played 4 years in college, where he averaged over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns a year. Was drafted in the 5th round.
Oh.
Okay.
Fifth round running back.
I don't know if he was a 5th round guy, but something about Northern Chicago and
It's gonna be crazy.
4 years in college.
You get it from Northern Chicago in 4 years in college. Go on.
No, I don't think I'm going to get it from Northern Chicago in 4 years of college. See, I'm torn between 2, and if I'm gonna lobby one guess out there, and then Jared, I'm going to tell you who my other thought was.
Yep.
My guess in this round is going to be Matt. Running is my forte.
It is not.
Okay.
That was another good guess, though, out of Chicago.
So, Jared, my other guess would have been Michael Turner.
You know, it's honestly funny. He's the second name that came to mind for me in the last round.
Yeah.
That's funny because both your guys ended up in Atlanta.
That's right.
I don't know what's going on.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll say Michael Turner because he was my second name anyways. So
Yeah, it is Michael Turner. That is what I was going for. He's going to be drafted by the Chargers in the 5th round. Did almost nothing with the Chargers. If you look at his stats, he never got above 500 yards for the season. Maybe he hit 502 one year, and every other year he didn't do much. Only started 1 game for them in 2004 and only scored 6 touchdowns there. So the bulk of his stats coming in his 5-year career with the Atlanta Falcons, where he finished with 7,338 yards, 83 touchdowns. I'm sorry, 66 touchdowns. 83 was his long, and 1 receiving touchdown, and was subsequently cut for failing a physical and never played in the NFL again. No. After a season where he had 200 carries, 800 yards, and 10 touchdowns.
Yep.
Breaking the Atlanta Falcons carrying rushing touchdown record.
Yep.
And then failed the physical and never played in the NFL ever again.
See, my reasoning for going the way that I was going was because I knew that Matt Forte played a lot of his years with the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured it was going to be either a hometown comeback to the pros or somebody who stayed local. And Michael Turner went to Northern Illinois, so that was kind of one of the two. So
again, the fact that I said he played 4 years in Northern Illinois, and you were like, "It's one of these 2 guys." Like,
well, you didn't say Northern Illinois. That's why I was like, well, I know Forte. I think played 4 years at Tulane as well. So I think that was like, it's one of these 4. But I also knew, like, running backs, like we're going in our generation, So I figured, that's why.
It's true. I've been keeping it local. Maybe I'll go really, really old next year.
Yeah, that'll kill me for sure. No, honestly, Forte didn't cross my mind because, like, I think, like, he, at least to my memory, I think he lasted a bit longer than just 9 years, which is why, like, he didn't cross my mind immediately. And also, 800 rushing yards felt a little bit low, like, as
a year.
A year. Yeah. That's still, for Forte, that felt a bit low. Like, I feel like he got a couple 1K seasons in there that would get his average a bit higher.
So stats on him, he played 10 seasons and he rushed for 9,796 yards.
So that's
Yeah.
what, like 900 yards, like well over 900 yards a season.
Yeah.
For sure.
But
970 yards a season.
Yeah, but he had 5,000-yard years in Chicago, but that was
Yeah.
that
What
was
a time.
Yeah.
What a time. What a time. Well, Justin, that was a fantastic edition of Name That Player once again. As Justin said, it's quickly become his favorite game, so it'll be nowhere near the last time we're going to have that, to say the very least. We're going to have plenty more fun of Name That Player throughout the rest of the season and beyond, of course. But before we keep it going, ladies and gentlemen, very quickly, boys, I have a quick edition of some Would You Rather.
Ooh.
But don't worry, this will actually be relatively quick because this will be the first segue of this episode to what we'll be talking about.
Okay, store brand.
Boys, yeah, store brand edition of the NFL Would You Rather.
Oh boy.
Guys, let me ask you a question. Which quarterback, I'm not going to give you the name, I'm just going to give you facts / things that have been said about these quarterbacks. And you tell me which one you would rather have. Would you rather have a quarterback who played through injury for your team, that tried his best to fight through pain to do everything right for the team? Or would you rather have a quarterback that had to sit out a season and that you knew was going to be suspended once he came back for you, but you still paid him $230 million anyway? Which quarterback would you rather have?
I mean, well, you know, I think we know who the second quarterback is there, Jared. And I think if anybody picks the second quarterback in that one, you're crazy. So I think I'm going with the quarterback who tries his best. Although I will say this: if either of us were NFL owners at one point, we had that and we made that mistake. It's like, hey, we were still NFL owners at one point in our lives, so it's fine, whatever. We made a mistake, so be it. But I'm going to go with the first quarterback because I think that's the obvious answer to this question.
Yes. Assuming Justin agrees.
Yeah.
So my not even attempted to be a veiled shot is right there to the first pair of games we're going to be talking about, ladies and gentlemen, because the Cleveland Browns will forever be linked to the fact that they said they needed an adult in the locker room. And they picked Deshaun Watson and not Baker Mayfield for that. And Baker Mayfield and the the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, well, he's definitely above the Atlanta Falcons. Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did a really good job at winning in week 1, ladies and gentlemen. Baker Mayfield, 4 passing touchdowns in that game, 289 yards for himself against the Washington Commanders, while Deshaun Watson, in a 33-17 loss to the Dallas Cowboys, went 24-45 for 169 yards, nice, 1 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a new allegation against him over the last week.
Can we say nice when it hits that number if it's Deshaun Watson, though? Like,
fair point.
That cheapens the moment of it.
Fair point. But with all that being said, the Cleveland Browns are already looking like things are not going that well for them, to say the very least. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers look like they might be more surprising than a lot of us wanted to give them credit for, to say the very least. So I think my question for this one is, between both teams, what do you think is more likely to happen here, boys? In a vacuum, do you think Tampa is going to slightly come back down to earth? Because are they really 37 points per game when it comes to who their head coach is and Todd Bowles? Or are the Cleveland Browns going to be able to bounce back from what was just a very not good week 1, to say the very least? Justin, I'll throw it to you first. What do you kind of buy more into? Do you buy into the fact that Tampa Bay could be this good, or are you buying into the fact that maybe Cleveland's going to be worse than a lot of us thought? Because a lot of people thought that Cleveland, made the playoffs last year, elite defense, 10, 11 wins last year, if memory serves? 11? Like, expected by many to once again challenge for a playoff spot. Are they maybe not that team because of who the quarterback is?
Well, that's the question that I was asking in the offseason is, does Cleveland have a quarterback? And so far, the answer has been no. I mean, this guy has not played well since he got there. And it begs the question, was it coaching? Was it system in Houston when he was lighting the world on fire? Maybe it was getting away with something you shouldn't have. Whatever it is, it's not happening here in Cleveland. And they have a lot of questions to ask. This Jaguars defense played really well last week. I mean, they gave up one big play, and it probably cost them the game. But I don't see Cleveland being this dynamic. I mean, sure, Amari Cooper could do that, but how you getting him the ball? I understand Tua struggled this year, especially last week, or I guess 2 days ago, but they're not that dynamic of an offense. They still don't have Nick Chubb. They're going to make Deshaun beat you, but they're not going to stack the box. They're going to not respect your run game. They're going to rush 3 or 4 guys, get after your quarterback who's been playing poorly anyways, and they're going to play good coverage. And Jacksonville has the pieces to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see them this week. I do think it's probably a closer game than they had against the Browns, against the Cowboys, but I don't see Cleveland looking very good this week, even with their really strong defense. It's a low-scoring game, but Jacksonville still puts up at least 24 to 30, and this is not going to go the way of Cleveland.
Yeah.
I am much higher on the Bucs. I like the Bucs. They're not going to play a secondary like Washington's every week, so I don't expect Baker to finish with 400 yards and 4 touchdowns and the perfect passer rating and all that stuff. But I do think this is a good team. Their defense is solid. Their secondary is okay. They've improved it since I complained 2 seasons ago, and they still have that great passing attack. So, and pretty good offensive line. So they're going to come back to earth this week for sure. They play the Lions. They play a really good team, but I don't expect them to be bad. I think they're going to surprise some people. I think what's the spread here?
7.5.
I think that's a little high. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 4-point game.
Especially with how close the playoff game between those 2 teams was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think early in the season, everyone's healthy. I think that they expect the Lions to come out swinging, especially after a tough battle last week against the Rams.
Yeah.
But I just matchup-wise, I think that this could be a high-scoring game. This could end up like 35-28 or like 35-31.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or something close like that. And I do think that maybe the Bucs even cover the spread. That's not my forte. Nobody bet on my posts, but my takes. But yeah, I would think that if I'm taking a team, I'm taking the Bucs here.
Well, considering the picks last week, Justin, you are the only person on this show with sentience.
We don't pick with spread. That's the difference. I could pick a winner. Picking a winner is a lot easier than picking a spread.
That's true.
Very true. Very true. Rick, I'll throw it to you. If you're the Cleveland Browns, are you hoping that the Deshaun Watson guarantees can somehow be voided so that you can cut him at this point? Because
do you also remember how I'm looking at this too? Remember week 1 back in our first show doing this, where Justin's saying we get 2 points if we get the correct win with the spread, and we were like, we don't know how to pick the damn spread.
That was not my idea.
Still,
it wasn't my idea.
And I said, all right, here's
I didn't say it. I never said anything.
You guys were like, screw that.
Look at him blaming Sandoval for everything.
I never said anything with the spread. So here's the thing about the Browns. Justin made a very good point about this, in that Nick Chubb not being in the game was a big detriment to them, because Jerome Ford really didn't have that great of a game running the ball.
Also, now running backs matter. Hashtag running backs matter.
They do. No, they do.
Running
because
backs always mattered.
They always matter when it comes between in the trenches, because you need to have a diversified offense, or else you're not going to be able to do anything. Now, the Bucs, you can say, well, Rashad White didn't have a good game. Bucky Irving ran for 62 yards on 9 carries. He was a good change of pace back.
Yeah.
That helped them out considerably. The Browns didn't have that. I mean, because Ford had 44 yards. Pierre Strong only ran the ball twice, And then again, we were saying, Watson couldn't get the ball to Cooper. He didn't get the ball to anybody. I remember that week in fantasy, I was down big going into the 4 o'clock games, because Marvin Harrison didn't do anything. We'll talk about him later, I'm sure. But the opponent I had David Njoku, who then got hurt. So that kind of helped my fantasy out. I was still well behind. We'll get to who won the game for me, because it was a bit of a surprise. But the Browns' defense just failed. It's a testament to the fact that the Dallas was able to move the ball around so well, when the Browns' leading tackler was Juan Thornhill, not Myles Garrett, not Dalvin Tomlinson. JOK had 9 tackles as well, but Juan Thornhill had 8 solo. When your leading tackler is a guy in the secondary, either he's coming up a lot on blitz packages and it's working, or he's making open field tackles after a 10, 15, 20-yard gain, because the other offense is moving the ball around so much. That's what happened. The Cowboys were able to kind of roll free. I mean, it was a slower game in the first quarter because I think Dallas was still trying to find their way around, but they were able to figure it out, get their wits about them, and get this big win. And that is shocking because the Browns, if they had a better quarterback, if they had a less damning quarterback, they might be a better team. But Joe Flacco's a backup in Indy now. You bet on the wrong horse, And for Tampa Bay, I agree with Justin again on the assessment here. That it's not going to be like this every single week. You're not going to have Baker throw 4 touchdowns every single week. You're not going to have Godwin go for as much as he did. I mean, look, Mike Evans, 2 touchdowns, but only 5 catches. And again, what have we talked about? Year in and year out, he's over 1,000 yards. But Jurg, you and I knew this from one of our offseason shows. Still has not caught over 100 balls in his entire pro career in one season,
which is wild.
The most mind-boggling thing you can think of. His highest is 96, Justin, and he still doesn't, and 5 is nice. Yeah, 5 is nice, but that's you're not going to get to 100 of that. But
Rick, you really think the defense was at fault there in that Cleveland game?
So here's my thing.
You got to remember there was a punt return for a touchdown.
Yeah,
there was 2 interceptions in the red zone.
Oh, I agree with you.
And to be fair, they also forced 4 field goals.
Dak only finished with 180 yards and 1 touchdown. Their leading rusher was Ezekiel Elliott with 40 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, no, I agree to that assessment that there were definitely plays that Dallas's offense was better and that the Browns weren't fine. But the point I'm trying to make though is that it's all about efficiency. Cleveland's offense is so inefficient that it doesn't matter how good the defense is supposed to be. Because if the defense is on there for too long, then they're going to tire. Yeah. You say 4 field goals they forced. That's all well and good, but that means they're still on the field for long, sustained drives or short fields where there's pressure on them, and eventually it just bends and cracks. This game could have been a 20-17 game, but I feel like because of all these mistakes that were made, it all compiled. And so that's what happened there is that the Browns defense eventually just wilted under the pressure, And again, maybe this game against Jackson will be better for them, but if their offense doesn't work, if it doesn't click, it doesn't matter how good your defense is. The Jets knew this last year. It doesn't matter how good your defense is. If your offense sucks...
Just know that every year.
Well, it's true. If your offense is bad, it doesn't matter how good the defense is. Defense can allow 3 points a game, but if your offense scores 0, you still lose every game. And for the Bucs, I mean, they kind of got lucky defensive-wise because the first opponent was a rookie, Jaden Daniels, who fumbled the ball 3 times. Was running the ball a lot. He played pretty well for his first game in the NFL. 17-24. Didn't turn the ball over despite all the fumbles that he had. Ran for 2 touchdowns. So it looks like Washington's going to run that kind of, Lamar Jackson, Robert Griffin III-esque offense. The Tampa just had more offensive firepower than Washington did. And again, like Justin said, you're not facing Mike Sainristil and Noah Igbenogany every single week who will just, open the doors and say, go ahead, Chris Godwin. Joe McMillan, here's the end zone. Find it for your first career touchdown. Go right ahead. No, you're not going to do that every single week.
All right. No, it's similar things. I think Tampa's going to be a very interesting case study to look at for the first half of this season. Because this was a team that started off last year pretty hot too. And we were having questions about how serious was that team. Pretty serious. And it could end up being a case like that again. And yeah, Cleveland, famous Jameis might be getting some starts there sooner than we all thought. So it's going to be very interesting to see.
So you go from Deshaun and all his legal troubles to Jameis with his history.
Yeah.
Oh boy, somebody fired the Haslams.
Jameis Winston has not grabbed an Uber driver from behind in a long time.
No, but he grabbed $35 worth of crab legs out of a Publix and didn't pay for them last time. So
just keep them
Florida kids.
Just bench them if they go to Florida this season. It'll be fine. All right. Let's stay to an extent to one of the games, but let's talk about the different side of it. And you actually just mentioned it, Rick. This is the next thing I was going to talk about. Jaden Daniels in his debut, 184 passing yards, 88 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns for himself. Look at his other draft classmates that got the start this past week, which is only 2 of them because May is on the bench for New England. Penix is not going to start until the next revolution. Pick whichever country you want it to be. It'll be another revolution happening before he gets to start. And JJ McCarthy is on IR for the entirety of this season.
Yep.
So that was Daniel's performance. Bo Nix, 138 passing yards, 2 interceptions, 35 rushing yards, and a score. And then this was interesting to say the very least. 14 of 29, 93 passing yards for Caleb Williams.
Yep.
And let me just get any rushing yards. He had 15 rushing yards on 5 carries.
Yep.
So lackluster, relatively speaking, for the 3 rookie QBs that actually got to start in week 1, boys. Very, how do I say this? I think relatively for all 3 guys, kind of conservative game plans to an extent, especially when you consider Nick's completed well over 20 passes, but didn't even crack 150 passing yards.
Yeah.
Clearly all 3, like it's game 1. We're not going to call these guys booms or busts at the moment, but it's very interesting to see what the week 1 game plan was for these 3 kids. And I'm more so just interested to see what has to happen going forward to me for all 3 of these rookie QBs to see a little bit more success. Not even just in week 2, but I'm talking about later in the season. Again, we're probably going to go more in a deep dive for these guys when we get to our midseason awards later on. So this is more just to like look at what was week 1. What do we think is probably going to get changed for these kids going forward to have a little bit more success? To me, it's, I don't want to say obvious, but for Caleb Williams specifically, like you have the weapons there. The kid should be able to make some plays. Like, I think this is just the case where we talked about it in the offseason. Did Chicago make the right choice of keeping this coaching staff? And on a week 1 basis, no. Because I think Caleb Williams is a lot more talented than not getting 100 passing yards in his debut. So I think for Chicago, it's about seeing the potential of airing it out. I think for Denver, it's almost a similar thing, but Knicks has less weapons to work with, so you could kind of forgive it. But again, just the whole premise of less, like 150, didn't even crack 150 passing yards, but completed all those passes. And then Jaden Daniels, I mean, we could say he's the best of the performances so far. But like you said, he had the fumbles, didn't lose any of them amazingly despite all that. I think it's relatively not simple, but like you can work on the fumbling issue with the kid. I don't think he made any critical errors when it came to his passing. Jaden Daniels so far the best of the rookie QBs. But I'm more so interested to see what is going to change with all these teams offensively going forward. That's my take on it. But Daniels by far is the best of the bunch so far.
Well, so to further that point too, going back to that Tampa Bay game, the Bucks scored on 7 of their 8 offensive drives. Jaden Daniels isn't out there on defense trying to stop them on defense. You know, that's not him. Like you can try and go shot for shot and score for score, but eventually, if you're in your first game, it's going to catch up with you.
That's why I did want to mention the win or loss for them, because like it's not like we can't expect rookie QBs to just Superman a game.
So, but I will say this: I think that of the 3 that we mentioned, Daniels' performance was basically the middle. Like it was the best of the 3, but it was the middle because while Bo Nix, he completed all his passes, he did throw 2 picks, and they didn't capitalize on the fact that there were 2 safeties in this game. So they, Denver was just all over the place, but Knicks didn't really do a lot to help them win. And I think those interceptions, you can argue that those are, bigger plays that could have caused, loss. I'm just trying to see what happened afterwards. So they had the interception. The first one led to actually a safety for the Broncos, if you believe that. And then the second interception basically led to nothing. So, like, they were inconsequential, but at the same time, like, nothing about the offense inspired you. When Josh Reynolds has your most yards receiving, and Devon Vele, who I'd never heard of, has the most catches for this team, Cortland Sutton's out there doing what exactly for you? Nothing. And then with the Bears game, Caleb Williams they could have started the ghost of Jim McMahon and they would have won this game because the defense and the special teams were just that good. Now, again, grain of salt. It's the Titans. We know they're going to lose in fantastic fashion. I mean, I think we can all
that was truly spectacular.
The etching, the artwork that'll hang in the Museum of Modern Art of Will Levis just on his hands and knees. No, as Stevenson runs past him for the interception touchdown. But Mr. Simone Biles had a punt return block for a touchdown. Cairo Santos had a great game kicking field goals. Yeah, Jonathan Owens had a touchdown.
I know, but calling him Mr. Simone Biles.
That's what he is. No one knows his real name, but that's what he is. Come on. That's true, especially in 2024. So, yeah, the Bears have all these weaponry, but Caleb Williams did not do a good job. Now, will he do a better job in weeks to come? Maybe. Will it be this week? No. Because I doubt you'll see anything from them. It's weird that the Bears might be the only team that has a 1-0 record without an offensive touchdown. And like, if somehow they win, and they're 2-0, they still won't have an offensive touchdown because Williams ain't doing anything.
Well, hold on. To be fair, right, they're not the only team without a touchdown that went 1-0 because the Steelers' 6 field goals are 1-0.
I mean, friend of the show, Mike Tomlin, stand up and salute.
Shout out to Chris Boswell for winning me
Chris
fantasy.
Boswell, man.
He won me this week.
I looked at the fantasy points. It was like 28. I was like, God damn it! I should have picked him instead of
I picked him because I know dang well Russell Wilson and Justin Fields ain't finishing drives.
But okay, so of the 3 rookie quarterbacks, yeah, I mean, Williams definitely got a win, so I guess he's over Nix. But like 93 passing yards and 15 rushing yards for a guy who won a Heisman Trophy. Yeah. And was the #1 overall pick.
It's why for me, I more so want to look at the discussion of what do these teams need to change about how they're game planning their young quarterbacks.
But I don't think there is anything you can change. I mean, Sean Payton's offense will suit Bo Nix eventually within due time. This was just a tough game where they were on the road, I think, right in Seattle.
Yeah, they were in Seattle.
So they were in a tough environment for Bo Nix's first game. You can say, oh, he was an Oregon quarterback all you want, but he wasn't. He was there for 1 year as a hired gun. Let's be real here. A tough game, tough road environment. They're going to have, I think, maybe a better game against Pittsburgh, but that defense is going to be nightmarish, so who the heck knows? The Bears, Eberflus doesn't know how to run an offense. He just doesn't. So, maybe we're right. Maybe we are past the point where, like, this is – but it's like they're winning in spite of themselves. I think the Commanders are in the best position because Dan Quinn can look at this offense and say, well, we did not score the requisite amount of points to win. We never turned the ball over on offense. We didn't make any silly mistakes. Daniels was 17-24. He ran for 88 yards. Austin Eckler had a very good game catching the ball, which is why you brought him here. 4 catches for 52 out of the backfield because Brian Robinson Jr. is your #1 running back. So you brought Eckler here for a reason. Yeah. So the Commanders, I think this is like, we talked about this. This is like what you want to see from them. Their offense is working. It just didn't work to the testament of the fact that Tampa Bay scored 37 points. Yeah. And that's not going to happen every single week. Because if it is, Dan Quinn, I'm sorry, you're not doing a good job coaching the football. And it's interesting for me to say that of these 3 teams and of these 3 rookie quarterbacks, Cliff Kingsbury had the best offense in week 1.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Oh, boy. A blind squirrel finds it not every so often, right?
Justin, your thoughts about the rookie QBs before we go into a rookie receiver in particular?
I'm not super worried about these 3 guys at this time. I think it's a little bit early. They all played pretty decent defenses. I mean, if you want to give the Titans credit, the one thing that they've always really had the last few years, solid secondary play. They just have. And it's weird, and I don't know why, but they've done well against guys throwing the ball. Now, I don't necessarily think that Caleb Williams should have only had 93 yards. That's a little worrisome, but I think that I'm not super worried about him long term. I am super worried about him this week because it's not going to be a great matchup for him. But, all of these guys all the way around, I'm not super worried. Let's see what they do. Let's put some more tape on film, and we'll see exactly what's going on. I mean,
yeah,
the matchups for 2 out of the 3 quarterbacks this week are not going to be great.
Yep.
But if you start to see them take off, I mean, I think week 4 and 5, the Bears play the Rams, and then they play the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You'll see some production. These guys will take off. Yeah. They just got to get a couple of plays under their belt and some more confidence, and it'll slow down for them a little bit.
I was going to say, too, I think I'm a little more worried for the 2 guys that haven't played because Michael Penix is probably like, oh, no, I'm going to be starting up pretty soon at some point. And McCarthy's sitting there in the IR all laying in bed watching Darnold throw a perfect game and like, what the heck, man? It's like Tom Ziegler, it should have been me.
Well, there's also May who's like watching the guy who all purposes, like he's supposed to take over at some point, get an upset win in week 1.
I don't even think Drake May knows where he is at this point. Like,
Probably not.
I don't know. Something about North Carolina quarterbacks are just, Daniel Jones.
Yeah, they're not hitting the last couple of years,
they're not doing well. No, it's very bad.
Like May, Sam Howell, I mean, got a bunch of yards. That's about it.
Trubisky.
TJ Yates, decent backup for like 3-4 years.
You know what? He's the best North Carolina quarterback, and that's not a high bar to clear.
That's also kind of sad.
Yeah, it's very sad.
So there's that. All right. So we talked about a bunch of rookie QBs there. We'll probably talk about some other rookies. I mean, we mentioned, I think, 1 or 2 already so far aside from them. I just want to mention this stat line. 1 reception, 4 yards.
Yeah.
But guys, like, it's not on the quarterback to decide who gets the football, apparently. Kyler Murray and the Buffalo Bills had the opportunity to play big upset in week 1 because they were up on the Buffalo Bills, and then they were not up on the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
And part of the reason maybe that potentially could have been the case is because Marvin Harrison Jr. only had 1 catch for 4 yards. Now, to an extent, Kyler Murray to me is, and I feel like I've had to do this so much in conversations about this stuff, is I feel like he used the completely wrong wording to get his message across. I think what he was trying to say was, I just can't force the football to one guy on every single play, which is fair. But the whole I don't have a choice in that, or like his exact, like, you kind of do. Like if we're being technical, you have the ability to decide who gets the ball. It's going to be your team or it's going to be the other team. And then within your team, who are you going to throw it to? Look, to me, this is just a case of like they're going to figure things out in Arizona, relatively speaking. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to put up a really good rookie season, I think, aside from this. They just need to do some more with scheming. Like, it's just whatever. Like, 2 out of 3 of us didn't really expect the Cardinals to get that many wins this season. Someone expected them to be a wild card team. Not sure who, but someone did. But this is just one of those cases where it's like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. Arizona, they scared the Bills for a little bit, but they end up losing at the end of the day because the Bills are supremely more talented, have the better quarterback, and game plan a little bit better. So it's kind of the deal, honestly. Like, it's tragic for Arizona. It would have been really nice to start the season with an upset win, but them's the break sometimes. Like, I don't have too much to say about it. I'm more so just including this just to really throw a shot at Kyler to an extent, which is more shot throwing than he did to Marvin Harrison that entire game. But yeah,
can I add something real quick
Yes.
here? If it is up to Drew Petzing, if it is up to him, why are you running on 3rd and 10 with 30 seconds to go in the 4th quarter and you're down by 6 and you need a touchdown? If it is up to you, what a boneheaded play call there after, 2 incomplete passes. So you want to run and you waste your time out that way and you only get 3 yards. Really? That's the play call? That's like, I to your point though, this has to get better with time because Arizona's got a good potential here to steal some of these games. They could have stolen this one, but Buffalo just turned it on in the second half defensively and offensively too. And, the Cardinals, whether it was they could not get out of their own way, and that's really what killed them at the end of the day. So,
yeah. Justin, any thoughts before we move on?
Throw the ball to Keon Coleman. You're killing me in my fantasy team right now.
Me and Justin are just getting unlucky with fantasy to start the season.
One target on Thursday.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
late in the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
I don't care how much you're winning by.
Yeah.
Yep. Meanwhile, the Buffalo Bills, the 1st-round pick that they traded, that eventually ended up becoming the pick that they used to draft Keon Coleman. Well, that guy's doing pretty well. First 2 games of the season, ladies and gentlemen, were, of course, Chiefs, Ravens, and Eagles, Packers. So 1 game in, and Xavier Worthy is the rookie of the year, basically. Because he just touches the football and it becomes a touchdown, apparently.
Exactly.
So the Chiefs defeated the Ravens in Arrowhead by a touchdown because Isaiah Likely was wearing Kevin Durant's shoes for this game, apparently, in cleat form. And then the Philadelphia Eagles just narrowly escape with a victory over the Green Bay Packers, 34-29 in Sao Paulo, in Brazil. So what a first 2 games of the season that was. I mean, Chiefs, a semi-ugly game. Offense could have been better, but they're the Chiefs. Nothing to say there. They're probably going to finish with a top 2 seed in the AFC now, if we're being honest. So, because now they just have that head-to-head victory over Baltimore.
Yep.
The Eagles-Packers, there's plenty we can talk about with this one. It was a really high-scoring game. Like how Justin was saying, throw Keon Coleman the ball. I was saying run the ball with Josh Jacobs because I had started him, and they finally started giving him the football. And look what happens when you actually give the ball to the running back who you paid a little bit of chunk of change to. But we know what the ultimate final story of that Packers-Eagles game was, and it's the fact that Jordan Love got hurt, boys. And this is not going to be the last quarterback injury that we talk about in this episode, but Jordan Love got hurt, and it's officially Malik Willis is going to be starting for the next 4 to 6 games, depending on what Jordan Love's timetable is here ultimately. Tough to say the very least for Green Bay. I mean, they did trade for Willis before the start of the season, so they clearly saw some value in him to be a backup quarterback. And now he's gonna have to take literally
do the value in the starter.
Exactly.
Yeah, right?
So we'll see what can happen there. Justin, I'll throw that tandem of games to you first. Just any notes you had about the first 2 games from the NFL season.
Yeah, what kind of play calling was that for Baltimore? You come out firing. You give the ball to Derrick Henry 5 times in the first drive. He rushes for 35 yards and a touchdown on the first drive. And then you give it to him, 8 more times the rest of the game?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, well, we didn't bring Derrick Henry here to be a 30 carry back. He didn't have to be a 30 carry back. He could still be your starter. Why is Justice Hill getting more carries than Derrick Henry?
No.
For the amount of money you're paying them, for their track record, for literally any reason. And I like Justice Hill. I don't think he's a terrible guy. I think he's a solid running back. He's worth, giving some carries, maybe running some 2 running back sets. But you bring Derrick Henry in here, you dominate when he's on the field in the first drive, and then you completely get away from that game plan, and you're like, I don't know why we can't score.
It's what happened in the AFC title game last year.
Because in the AFC title game last year, they fell behind early. And it's hard to run the ball that way. One, when you didn't really have a good running game for the whole year, it was really just Lamar, and you're mostly good on defense and passing the ball. And you're also playing a high-scoring offense, so you have to keep up. Like this one, they were shot for shot.
Yeah.
Touchdown for touchdown, field goal for field goal. It was a tie game. And they just completely got away from what made them successful. And then they had to play catch-up again.
Yep.
If they would have maybe stuck to their game plan like they had on the original drive, and I'm not saying you should run Derrick Henry into the ground. I get it. He's an older back. He's got some injury history now. But there's a difference between 13 carries or 14 carries that
13.
he had.
13.
He had 13 carries. And he had 3 in the second half.
Yeah.
4 in the second half?
Yeah, 3 or 4.
It didn't matter. It was a close game. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Especially if you were successful in giving him the ball. So if you want to be a run-first team, be a run-first team. If you want to be a pass-first team, say that. But I guarantee you, Derrick Henry is a volume guy, and he's always been a second-half running back.
Yep.
Always. He gets the team beat up in the first half, and then he takes advantage in the second half. That's just what his game has always been.
Yeah.
And listen, fantasy owners, I'd be worried. If this is the way that they're going to use him, I'd be worried.
Yeah. But
he's not always going to get a first drive touchdown.
And also, he had 13 total carries, 0 receptions in this game, which every once in a while he might catch a ball or two. But it's we know his game is run first. Between Zay Flowers and Justice Hill, 15 touches between those 2 guys by themselves. And I know everyone would be like, well, 2 guys would obviously go over 1 guy in terms of total touches. It's Derrick freaking Henry.
I don't
give him
getting touches.
Give him next week. They're facing the Raiders this upcoming week. Let that be the game where Derrick Henry doesn't need to get that many touches because you're probably going to beat the Raiders.
What? Again, I disagree with that. He shouldn't get 30 touches in a game where it's an obvious blowout. In a game where you need him to be Derrick Henry, you have to give him the opportunity to be Derrick Henry.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it a different way from you, but that's what I'm saying. It's they should have given him the ball more.
Yeah, I don't. Again, we're saying the same thing, but to get away from a game plan with what probably is a Hall of Fame running back, still in the tail end of his prime. Sure, he's not going to be like this forever, but you were a few plays away from the Super Bowl last year. Yep. You were 2 quarters away from the Super Bowl last year. And your biggest hole was running back.
Yep.
And you go out and you sign one of the best running backs we've seen in a long time.
Yep.
Pure workhorse running backs. And you decide you're not going to give him the ball in the second half?
Yep.
I mean, what was he even really on the field for more than 5-10 plays in the second half? That's criminal.
Yeah, that is. And the thing too, also that There were 3 drives by the Ravens in the first half and the second quarter that just stunted all their momentum. Their first drive in the second quarter was started and ended with Lamar getting sacked and fumbling the ball, leading to a Chiefs field goal. The second drive that they had, they were stopped at the 50. They went for it on fourth down. And on 4th and 3, I get it. 4th and 3 is a little long, but why not run Derrick Henry in that instance instead of throwing a short pass to Zay Flowers for 1 yard?
Wasn't even on the field.
No, wasn't even on the field. Dumb. And then the third drive that they had, they make a very good drive. Justin Tucker from 53, it's wide left. And then they're playing catch up from there as they're going along. And it's just
What was the contract
for Henry?
You pay him $8 million
I think so, yeah.
Something like that,
to be a backup.
yeah.
Well,
Who had more touches? Who was on the field more?
Part-time Derrick Henry.
They paid him $8 million to be a backup.
Yep.
In week 1.
Yep. And it's funny too. It's like the touches that he would get in the second half, minus the one that went for a loss of a yard, 9 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards. Something's working. When he touches the ball, it's working.
Let me tell you this. The one thing that I think that this says, and it exposes them a lot, they don't believe in this offensive line.
Mm-mm. They don't.
And that's part of the issue. And when you put that into context, it makes a little more sense because then now Derrick Henry is taking a whole bunch of hits in the backfield, which he was.
Yeah.
But so they're going to try and throw the ball to open up the run.
Yep.
That's not ever been the Ravens' way.
That's not how the game works.
It could be how the game works. It's how they do it in Kansas City.
I suppose. Well, yeah.
But it's not the way that Lamar has been historically playing. And it's not the way the Ravens have been historically successful.
Yeah.
Right.
And with the pieces you brought in and your current build of the roster, that's a major issue on the offensive line.
And when was the last time we could say that of the Ravens team specifically can't trust their offensive line? Because the Ravens have honestly very notoriously had some very good offensive lines. Linderbaum
is very good. Rosengarten, who they drafted this year, should be
a
player. Yeah. Ronnie Stanley.
And that's one of the, in theory, best tackles in football. They've paid him to be one of the best tackles in football, but
yeah,
it's tough so far, to say the very least. And let me just say this before we move on very quickly to talking about Packers-Eagles. If that likely touchdown had stood, they were going to go for 2 there. What is John Harbaugh's kink with going for 2 to decide the game in the end zone, and they never get it? They almost never get it. Do you think they would have gotten? I don't think they would have gotten it.
My thing is, I don't think he's choosing.
They would have run Justice Hill just to make Justin angry.
They would have ran Justice
I
Hill.
don't care. Like I said, I like Justice Hill. I think he deserves to be in there. He's proven that he's a valuable piece of that offense.
In a 2-point conversion setting, I would rather have Derrick Henry hitting the truck stick over somebody than Justice Hill trying to
have both. You're a run-first team. Remember who you are. Yeah. Don't get away from your identity.
You could have gone split.
You need Derrick Hill and you need Derrick Henry in there.
Bring back the wishbone.
He could be flanked by Justice Hill on Lamar Jackson. Now you have 3 legitimate threats at running back.
Yeah.
2 legitimate directions in which you could have an option play, a serious legitimate option play, in which at least one of those guys has experience throwing touchdowns in that area, Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You also have a legitimate pass catching back out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just the 2-back set gives you 5 options that you have to cover.
Yeah. And
that's including Zay Flowers and Bateman on the sides.
And
that's
also consider
a really good threat. And I don't remember them doing it once.
And also consider the fact they can run twin tight ends now for extra blocking. Likely had a banger of a game.
You did?
There's no more excuses for Baltimore.
No.
You have a million different ways you can defeat your opponent, literally.
It just says volumes about the division that Pittsburgh's leading right now.
And honestly, last note about the mismanagement with the running too, because we mentioned Justice Hill. He only had 1 carry this game.
Yeah,
Justice Hill.
One carry for 3 yards.
Yeah.
Now he did his damage, like you mentioned, Justin, his receiving, because he's a receiving threat. 6 catches, 52 yards, but only 1 carry for Justice Hill. Huh? What is going on in Baltimore?
Does that mean they only ran the ball 14 times with running backs?
Well, no, because the breakdown goes, Lamar had 16 rushes, and I mentioned Zay Flowers because Zay Flowers had 2 rushes on trick plays and stuff.
Yep.
Like there were more rushes by non-running backs for the Ravens in the first game.
Now, how many of those were designed rushing plays for Lamar, or was a lot of him taking it himself?
I would say probably a few, but not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say of the 16, I would guess 6 of them were probably designed running plays.
Yeah.
We have to look at the exact breakdown, but like, I would say at least 6 of them were.
That leads more credence to what Justin was saying, though, about the offensive line not being trusted a lot. Because, again, but what was the thing that we talked about last year in the AFC title game? Lamar, when he holds the ball too long in the pocket, just waiting for everyone to get open, then the O-line collapses.
Yeah.
But is the issue the guys can't get open?
Maybe.
And I will say, from what I've watched, because I did fall asleep for a short period in the third quarter because I was exhausted, they were getting to Lamar very quickly. It wasn't that he was necessarily holding the ball.
Yeah.
It was that line collapsed immediately.
Yeah.
Give credit to a good defense in Kansas City. Don't get me wrong.
100%.
Yeah.
But
100%. All right, Eagles-Packers is a game to talk about. Like, you look at performances from both sides, there were a lot of explosive plays in this game, right? And in a game that ends 34-29, you're going to see a lot of explosive plays. Jaden Reed, props to him. 2 total touchdowns in this game, doing his best Xavier Worthy impression. He had 1 carry on a nice little play for 33 yards and a score, 4 catches, 138 receiving yards, and a tutty, including a 70-yarder himself. You look at the other side of it when it comes to the Eagles. Jalen Hurts did throw 2 interceptions, but he still got 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley, man, what a day for him. 3 total touchdowns between rushing and receiving, 132 total yards for himself. This is just one of those times where just the offenses were going to win out. Whichever offense was going to sputter a bit, that was going to cost the team the game. And Philly was able to just do enough. But we know the story for this one. It's Jordan Love on the final. Was it the very last play of the game, or was it just the final possession?
There were 2 more plays after that, I think.
So the final possession of the game.
Yep.
Final plays, he gets sacked and twisted around a bit, and like the replay is just not kind, to say the very least, to what happens to his leg. And thankfully for him and for the organization, it's not a like there was obviously we were talking about it for ourselves. We were talking about the fear of is it his ACL? Is it maybe was it you that Rick that brought up what could it have been the Achilles somehow?
I said the patella because it looked like the kneecap kind of collapsed in on itself.
Right.
And I thought it was the Achilles because of the way it popped.
Yeah, the Achilles, patellar tendon is a brutal one too, man. Like like guys, we're talking like in the 90s and early 2000s, the ACL was that thing where you tear it and it's like you don't come back the same. It's almost like the patellar tendon is going to be that new thing because a couple of guys in multiple sports, they tear their patella. I haven't seen anyone come back the same from a torn patellar tendon the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's rough.
So ultimately, like big avoidance there for the Packers in that regard, but he's still going to miss a couple weeks. Going to miss some time. It's going to be Malik Willis that's going to get the shine here. Again, I mentioned it. They traded for him. Very slight ups and a lot of downs in his time in Tennessee. Was superseded by multiple quarterbacks there, ultimately. And now he's going to be getting the opportunity here in Green Bay. Boys, what do you take from... We could talk about the Eagles if we want, but I feel like with how they performed in Week 1, we're probably going to be able to talk about them plenty this season. What notes do you guys really quickly take from what the Packers did in Week 1 that they could use to help Malik Willis going forward? Because now the focus needs to be damage control for the start of the season here to have yourself in the best possible record for when Jordan Love comes back.
Well, first of all, sidebar for me, stop playing games in international stadiums that are soccer fields.
Yeah.
The field was atrocious.
Yeah.
And you know what the problem was too? Soccer fields can be like that because the cleats are different.
Yeah.
They're a little bit longer. They're a little bit more, they're easier to work with, whereas football cleats can't do that. I think Green Bay found their number 1 wide receiver, guys. I think Jaden Reed proved that he can be a number 1 guy. I mean, he's a threat. It's not like you're over the top number 1 guy, but he's still a threat to catch the ball and make plays. So that's a positive because Christian Watson was non-existent in this game. 3 for 13. Dontavian Wicks was targeted 3 times, didn't catch a damn thing. Dobbs had 4 catches. So I think Reed has proven that he can be your number 1 guy. Josh Jacobs, if you give a mouse a cookie, he'll want a glass of milk. If you give Josh Jacobs the ball, he'll want to run it down your throat.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
84 yards for him and even 20 yards on 2 catches.
So I think that's going to have to be the game plan. I think you want to mitigate your deficiency as much as possible going forward until Jordan Love gets back. So if I'm Malik Willis, if I'm the Packers, I have him I don't want to say it like this, but it's the truth. I almost give him the Tommy DeVito rub in the very beginning, where I don't have him throw the ball maybe more than 10, 11 times in a game. I make that offense this week solely run through Josh Jacobs. Make him be the guy, because are they at home or are they in the Dome this week? Because they're playing Indy.
They are. Why is this thing not scrolling for me? They are in Green Bay.
So run the ball with Josh Jacobs. Run it with Jaden Reed. Run some trickery, run some gadget plays. Make Malik Willis throw the ball as little as possible, because, yes, lots of downs, a few ups here and there. But if the Packers start off 0-2, it's trouble.
Yeah.
It's trouble. And it's not their fault, but it's trouble.
They play the Colts.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Green Bay is what we're saying.
I know, but that Colts defense is pretty good. I know they got carved up by C.J. Stroud.
Well, I think even the back half of last season, their rushing defense has been struggling since the back half of last season.
Mixon ran for 160 this last week.
So this would be the game to see how that approach would go for you if you're Green Bay,
100%.
because this is a team that is like clearly so far. Yes, we're one game in, so we can only take everything with a grain of salt. But one game in, and the Colts rushing defense is nothing to write home about. Now they could use this Packers game to bounce back from that, or the narrative could persist. It's either or. And the funny part is Green Bay can very much have a role in that. So there's that.
But the difference is they had to combine all of the threats that Houston has. This injury has made the Packers one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And the Colts still have a very good defensive line. They're great at getting after the quarterback and historically have let the rush get past them.
Yeah.
If they can keep everything in front of them this game, it's going to be a long day for Green Bay.
Yeah.
Because they can score on offense.
And also, to give credit to the Colts, they did sack C.J. Stroud 4 times.
Yeah.
So this is and this could very much be a case where if it gets into second and third and long, the Packers drive just might die there, because Malik Willis, this ain't college. He was decent at the deep throw in college. Not so much been the case in his young NFL career so far.
But no offense, he was playing at Liberty. They weren't playing anybody really that special. This is a lot different. You look across the line, it's going to see Anthony Richardson, who's at Florida, and he wasn't great at Florida, but he was still playing SEC schools, and he was still beating them every so often. Yeah. This ain't Liberty versus Troy, man.
Yeah. Quick note on Anthony Richardson, because I feel like, again, these are two teams that are going to come up. Anthony Richardson went 9 of 19, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns for himself, 6 carries, 56 yards, and a touchdown. So a lot of good and a lot of not great there with his game. It's going to be interesting to see how that Colts offense evolves. And again, this Green Bay team, they look a little bit vulnerable right now. This could be we talk about, this is a big test game for the Packers. It's a bounce back game here, potential for Indianapolis as well. So it's very interesting to see how this game will go for all intents and purposes. Shout out Alec Pierce, who had 125 yards against the Texans, which is absolutely absurd to say the very least. Just catching the deep strike. All right. We've talked a lot, there have been some bummers here so far, but we talked a lot of good so far, right? There have been some good performances we talked about. Daniel Jones has more pick sixes than touchdowns since he signed his extension.
Oh, Lord.
The New York Giants got slaughtered by the Minnesota Vikings, 28-6.
Yep.
Aaron Jones looked like young Aaron Jones again with the 94 rushing yards he had against this Giants defense. Malik Neighbors had 66 yards.
Yay.
I think he may have actually led the rookie receivers after week 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But yeah, Daniel Jones, 22 of 42, 186 yards, 2 interceptions. Not great. No. But New York, have no fear, because the worst performance was here. 13 of 30, 161 passing yards, 2 interceptions. The leading rusher had 5 carries and 22 yards. The leading receiver had 3 catches for 49 yards. All in all, it was not a good day to be a Carolina Panther player, coach, fan, supporter, onlooker. It's never a good day to be the current Carolina Panthers owner because of the scumbag he is, because he set back this organization at least 5 to 10 years. The Carolina Panthers lost 47-10 to the New Orleans Saints. The discussion needs to be had, boys, because it's in the title.
Yeah.
Are the Carolina Panthers going to go 0-17 this year?
Listen, This was going into the season. This was the one game that I had Carolina maybe having a chance of winning, because I thought first game out of the gate, new head coach, offensive minded head coach, and then I remembered that Bryce Young went to Alabama, which had the number 1 overall, and that's something you don't do. God, this Panthers team is awful. They are horrendous in every facet of the game. Then you're down 30-0 and you have a measly field goal to save you from being shut out at the end of the first half. Like, yeah, it's not good. And making the Saints look like the Drew Brees Saints, making Derek Carr look competent, making Dennis Allen look like a genius.
Yep.
I mean, we can only hope that if we ever have a bad day in our lives, that we have someone from like Carolina who sounds up close to us. That way, people look at us and say, "Oh, really? He's not that bad. He could be Carolina." Like, oh, okay, it could be that. Because, I mean, listen, the Giants were bad, but were the Giants Carolina levels of bad? In some ways, yes, but not really, because Neighbors at least had a good enough game, and there was some. Wandale had a positive game. You can take away some things there.
It's also the fact that Daniel Jones throwing 2 interceptions is one of those things where, like, you can kind of make the case where the Giants' defense was starting to get a little bit extra tired because, like, they had to be out there for extra possessions because of Daniel Jones.
Of course.
The Panthers are just consistently out there. It doesn't matter. Like, the Saints could have only been given 5 possessions this game, and I think they would have scored all 5 times.
And you know what the funny part is? The Giants actually had the ball more than the Vikings did in that game. They had the ball for about 32 of 60 minutes. If you look at time of possession for Carolina and New Orleans held the ball for 36 and a half minutes in this game. Yeah.
Because they kept scoring so quickly.
Yes. And because Carolina was just that awful, they kept giving the ball back to them. It was like, here you go, have another one. Oh my God.
Yeah, this, to say the very least, is not going to be an easy year for Carolina.
I apologize to Germany, but then again, I don't, because you know what you did. That's why you get this game in November. Panthers-Giants. You know what you did, Germany.
Hey, it's been like 75, 80 years.
Doesn't matter. You still know what you did. Boy.
What's going to be a higher scoring game? Panthers-Giants or Panthers-Bears?
I thought you were going to say Panthers-Giants are Game 7 of the World Series this year, whoever's in it. Because
probably Game 7 of the World Series.
Game 7 of the World Series.
That's another good question.
Yeah. Oh, boy. You know what? I will say Panthers-Bears right now, only because I think the Bears can score points in a lot of different ways. Whereas the Giants, I don't know. And the Panthers
Giants are a football team.
Sure. What brand of football are we playing? I don't know. Oh, boy. It's bad.
It is.
That's bad.
Right now, I know we started saying this at the end of last year. I just don't see where on the schedule this Panthers team gets their first win.
I don't. They have to, I guess, hope for some injury somewhere down the line to somebody. You think
it's only going to be one injury that makes the difference? I think it's going to be like 15.
Yeah. I mean, listen. Maybe hope for a lockout and have replacement players. Maybe that's what you need.
Probably. You know how the Panthers basically sat all their starters the entirety of the preseason. There are questions about that. Yeah, I think there was a reason that there were questions about that. They're going to need to hope that a team treats this game like the preseason. Just put in all the backups.
Well, I mean, if the Falcons or the Bucks clinch the division by week 17 or week 18, they might just do that.
Yeah. Michael Penix might get his first career start against the Carolina Panthers.
I was going to say, but you know what? If it's the Bucks, Kyle Trask will still have a perfect rating.
Probably.
Yeah.
We're going to forever judge Michael Penix or Kyle Trask based on what happens against the Panthers in those games if it happens.
Absolutely.
Like, if Michael Penix comes out and gives the Panthers their one win of the season, like, it's going to be like, bust.
Worst pick ever.
Worst pick ever.
Worse than Jamarcus Russell.
Oh, Lord. It's going to be tough times, to say the very least.
Yeah.
When it comes to that. All right. Hey, guys, you know what? One Harbaugh may have lost in week 1, but another one got a victory. Jim Harbaugh wins on debut in the Chargers' 22-10 victory over the Vegas Raiders. Justin Herbert, I don't know. I don't know what words could properly describe his game. 17-26, 144 passing yards. That kind of sounds like a J.J. McCarthy type stat line in college. It was the running game, though. J.K. Dobbins, 10 carries, 135 yards, and a touchdown. Picked him up in fantasy this week, by the way.
There you go.
He was on the waiver wire. Put Njoku on IR. So,
Bye-bye.
So there's that. But yeah, this was just a game where the Chargers did enough to win. They were able to beat a team that they just in a couple paces had more talent than. And yeah, it was just like there. I mean, obviously, would you want a better stat line for Herbert? Yes. But overall, I mean, like you got the win. That's all that matters right now. That's like I think after what was 2023 for the Chargers, you'll just take this victory and hope that the stats come later down the line. Like I mean, maybe the Chargers have a softball in week 2. Oh. so the Chargers will have plenty of opportunities to be able to make up some stats in this upcoming game, to say the very least. What'd you guys make of Jim Harbaugh's return to the NFL, boys? Justin, I'll throw it to you first.
I like the resilience of the team. They're lucky they were playing the Raiders because it was a sloppy start.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good, but they need to get that offense, specifically that passing game going. The offensive line was okay. Again, some good, some bad. And the defense is kind of where we left it. They can get after the quarterback. The secondary is not great. They are going to get exposed by some better teams. But it's okay. It's a rebuilding year. I expect them to be middle of the pack this year. They're not going to light the world on fire, but they're going to build for the future. And hopefully we can get a pretty good team surrounding what looks like a really good young quarterback still. So.
Yeah, this game was 9-7 after 3 quarters because the Chargers had 3 field goals. The offense wasn't really motoring. And then the Raiders missed a field goal. Carlson misses a field goal. And then Herbert finds Hayden Hurst. Quick throw over in the Raiders territory. They eventually score to start the 4th quarter on a Dobbins run.
Yep.
And they had 1 good quarter out of 4, which against the Raiders, that's all you really needed. Because, I mean,
that's true.
Minshew played okay, but like this offense just didn't look, Zamir White is no Josh Jacobs. We'll put it that way. Neither is Alexander Madison. So I think the Raiders
didn't look terrible though.
No, it didn't look terrible at all. But it's just like, that's not exactly the punch that you expected from this Raiders team. But again, Chargers didn't need to do a whole lot. They did a lot at the end. They got the win, and they're probably going to go 2-0. Do they deserve it? I don't really know, but probably 2-0.
Yeah. And the Raiders, I mean, it'll be tough for them this upcoming week. They have the Ravens, but week 3 they have the Panthers. So there's your warm-up game right there.
Yeah.
This is basically just going to become who gets to warm up against the Panthers on a given week.
Exactly.
All right, last 2 games of the week before we move on to Thursday Night Football. Lions over Rams. That game ended up going into overtime. Very close contested game, but at the end of the day, Detroit just ran the ball down Los Angeles' throat there. 163 rushing yards in total for this team. 131 of those yards came via their top 2 running backs. Of course, Montgomery with 91, Gibbs with 40. As Jameer Gibbs fantasy owner, please get Jameer Gibbs the ball more. But ultimately, that was a game. And Jameson Williams, 121 yards for himself on 5 catches and a tutty. If Jameson Williams can become the guy that they've been hoping he would be, this Lions team is going to be very scary, to say the very least. Yeah. Rams, give them all the credit in the world. They kept this extremely close. That defense for their first game without Aaron Donald, the fact that they were able to slightly averse that offense, you give them credit. They held them relatively well in regulation, kept them in check. Jared Verse and Byron Young got a couple sacks in this one. Like, good game. You just got out, not even outwitted at the end. It's just Lions got the ball and they just ran it down your throat. It's like commendable on the Rams side. Lions get the hard fought dub. We kind of talked about that earlier, so I don't think there's too much else to extol from it.
Except Rams are in a bit of trouble now.
Yeah, true.
The coup is on IR.
Yep, and that was a brutal loss, to say the very least, because if he stays healthy, maybe they could pull off the upset in this game.
Yeah, maybe.
So it's something to say there. Monday Night Football was not a close game compared to Sunday Night Football. The San Francisco 49ers win 32-19 as they just completely beat the Jets. Alan Lazard had a decent game receiving. Breece Hall had some carries. Aaron Rodgers made it past the first drive. There's that.
Mm-hmm.
But the San Francisco 49ers did their thing. Brock Purdy, mistake-free football. Jordan Mason, 147 rushing yards for himself. Jaquan Jennings, Deebo Samuel played their roles well. George Kittle played his role well. A lot of chunk plays when you look at it for this Niners team. Like, longest run for Mason was 24 yards. Longest reception for Jennings, 22. Longest reception for Samuel, 25. Longest reception for Kittle, 26. there was a lot of just play after play after play, big chunks for the San Francisco team, and it just eventually wore this Jets defense down, to say the very least. I'll throw it to you, my two Jets fans here. What notes are you taking away from the first game of the season here, boys?
Jake Moody got me my fantasy win because 6 field goals, but again, that's the thing, is that like when you face a team that has a good kicker like that, if your defense holds out of the end zone, it doesn't matter because Moody beat them single-handedly by himself. He had 20 points on his own. The Jets only had 19. This is another case where, like we talk about, if you're a very solid, stout defense, and you're on the field constantly, it's going to ruin you. I'm curious as to know why Sauce Gardner was off the field for as long as he was, because he was not really effective at all in this game, I think. I mean, according to the stats, there might have been a point where the numbers didn't show up, but like, I don't know. To me, Justin, I don't know. I went into this game thinking to myself, if they win, great. But if they don't, I'm not going to be too crazy about it because it's the Niners. They went to the Super Bowl last year. They were, a stop away from winning the whole thing. So I'm not too upset or concerned, I would say. There were some concerning things, but, I'll tell you what. If this was this week's matchup, if the Jets did this against the Titans in Week 1, I'd be more concerned than it was the Niners. That's just me. I think they'll bounce back, but there's not really a whole lot I can take away from this game that was like, oh, this is doom and gloom for the Jets. This season's already over. Like, the quarterback is still up and standing and moving, so I think we're doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, he made it through the first game, which was a big thing. But I mean, my issue was with the run defense. Their run defense was porous last week.
Yeah.
It was non-existent.
Yeah.
I mean, he averaged 6 yards a carry. That's terrible. And they didn't really need to do anything else besides run the ball against the Jets. They didn't make it difficult for them. They didn't do anything. So it was a little bit difficult to watch. If you watched the first half, there was 3 guys on offense. There was Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall. Nothing else.
Yeah.
And again, they couldn't stop the run. So the time went off quick. 49ers kept getting into at least field goal range. And it kind of just seemed like a team floundering. Like they came in and expected to win and then didn't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's obviously one of the more difficult tests on their schedule. 49ers are still a great team. They still have the majority of that Super Bowl run team that made it to the Super Bowl last year and lost to the Chiefs. But you were just hoping for a better performance, I think, because that game was over in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And that's typical Jets. And we were hoping for something a little more this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that's kind of the way it shakes out, because a closer loss I would have been a little bit happier with, because again, you want to fight to the end. But you're right, and even going into it, when you hear that McCaffrey's not going to play, all of a sudden you think to yourself, all right, we could probably see the Jets defense do some special things now that guy's gone. But then along comes Jordan Mason and plays like freaking Tony Dorsett, so it's like, oh, well, great. Well, that's back to the drawing board, guys. And again, like I said, like you said, one of the toughest battles that they would have on the schedule, because if you need a bounce back game, nothing like a soft, pillowy Titans pillow to land on, for week 2. So,
well, let's hope so.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Well, I think we covered almost everything that was worth covering in week 1, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
And even if we didn't, we'd probably mention it. So,
yeah.
That is the completion of the highlights of week 1. There'll be plenty more, of course, to talk about weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera, as a lot of what we talked about are going to be things that we look at in the upcoming weeks. Teams performing better, the Packers and what they need to do, the rookies, et cetera, et cetera. The Packers are now not the only team that need to worry about what a backup quarterback can do, because, SpaghettiOs, the Miami Dolphins. Not great. So the Bills-Dolphins matchup on Thursday Night Football ended up how a lot of Bills-Dolphins matchups have ended recently, which is the Bills blowing them out by several scores. 31-10 was the final margin in this one. Shout out James Cook, who had himself a day, 3 total touchdowns, 1 in the air, 2 rushing. There was also a pick 6 later in the game that basically, I mean, it was probably done at that point, but sealed it. Tua had 3 interceptions in that game, one of them being that pick 6, of course. And that wasn't the worst thing that happened to him, because late in the game, he gets the snap, he runs forward, he goes head first into a defender, and he doesn't get up. And all the prediction, like, there's so many different ways to talk about this. But this is now the 4th time, and yes, it's the 4th time. Not because some people were like, oh, this is the 3rd. No, it's the 4th time, because despite the fact that there was the one game in 2022 where they didn't call it a concussion, it was a concussion. Tua now, for the 4th time in his NFL career, we believe to have concussions that we know of. This is getting to a point where what is happening with this team, with this player? It's absolutely just it's difficult to talk about from so many perspectives. It's just like, I don't want to start with the generic question everyone's talking about, like, should Tua continue his career? Because, like, even that question, I'm just like, it sucks to have to ask that, but it might end up being a case where we almost do kind of have to. So, Justin, I don't know, take the reins on this one. Like, I guess I'll throw it to you. It's like, if you're the Dolphins and you're Tua, how on earth are they supposed to handle this going forward? Game result forgotten about for a moment. Just like, what happened there? Like, what do you even do for both the team and the player in that perspective moving forward with how this ended?
I mean, there's really nothing you can do. You got to hope that your player learns to protect himself a little bit more. But I mean, at this point, protecting yourself might be not playing anymore. So it's interesting to think about which direction they're going to go in, because it's such an unknown. I mean, we've never really seen anyone do this repeatedly.
Yeah.
So the question is, where do you go from here? I mean,
Yeah.
are they going to sign a veteran? Are they going to have a 3rd quarterback on the roster just in case? Do you keep Tua around? Do you make him make a decision for himself, or do you make the decision for him? The answer is not so easy.
Right. It's not cut and dry. It's not black and white at all, because
Yeah.
there's so many things that go into it.
I mean, it's just tough. So I don't want to speculate on what he's going to do,
Right,
or what he should do, because I'm not a doctor. I'm not in his
Yeah.
position. I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
It's tough when you see a guy that has a lot of potential and a lot of skill,
Yeah.
and then he's got to be forced with such a rough dilemma.
And the crazy part to me is when you look at it, every single time it's something different, basically. Let's go back 2 seasons to 2022. One of those games where we believe he got the concussion. I know we talked about pre-show, but I keep forgetting if it was the Bills or the Packers game from that season where it was said that it was something else, but it was clearly a concussion. Was it the Bills game where he got hit hard and he tried to get up?
And he got up, and then they had to hold him up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there was that case where it happened on just like, I forget if he was hit after the play necessarily, or if it was a sack that he just struggled getting up
he
from.
was thrown down and his head hit the turf.
Thrown down, head hit the turf. Bengals Dolphins game. What, like a week? Was it a week later that game happened?
The
like
next game,
the very next game,
was a Thursday night game.
Yeah, just a sack, a common sack. Like, it wasn't anything crazy.
Head hit the ground again.
Head hits the ground. He doesn't get up, and then he comes back. And I don't think it was the first game he came back. I think it was a game or two after that against the Packers. Somewhat similar to what happened in the Bills game. He gets like pushed after completing a throw, wasn't thrown down, but you could tell he was a little bit shaky getting up. Not to the same extent what happened in that Bills game, but he was still shaky. That's 3 different instances that happened 2 years ago. Relatively clean bill of health last year. And then this year, just gets like, this is probably the only one that you could put on him, which is like, why are you diving forward? Why are you going body first, head first to try to make the play? Like, this is probably the one, but I don't even want to critique him for this because at the end of the day, like, look, when you're, and I always try to give athletes like this leeway of when you're in the moment of the play, sometimes your first instinct may not have always been your best instinct. And I can't necessarily blame, like, I don't want to critique him in any way, shape, or form, especially considering what the end result was of like him going forward, because maybe it's just not his taught instinct yet to slide first. But like, it's just one of those things where it could have been avoided. Like the 3 times in 2022, like obviously not ideal, but those were somewhat freak incidents that happened to an extent. Maybe the Bills one you could say like him getting swung down after, like they shouldn't have done that, but the other two on a regular sack and being pushed down after a play, like that stuff happens to everyone. So it's just bad luck. This is the one where you could kind of say like, why did he do that? I'm not even comfortable necessarily going to that extent because I just don't want to. So this is just like you said, it's not black and white. It's not something easy to talk about. It's going to be interesting to see what the Dolphins are going to be doing to, like, they have Skylar Thompson. He came in and he finished the game off, played relatively fine. He's gotten some, reps in his career. He did start a playoff game for them a couple of years back. So like this, it's not going to be the first time he's being thrown into action, but what are the Dolphins going to do is the question. But like, it's just rough to talk about. So, well, Podfather is doing fathering duties on the bottom of the screen.
But you're right. I mean, and it just speaks more volumes to the fact that this is, again, I also thought at some point we would see Tua wear the Guardian cap over the helmet, right? Because even though it looks ridiculous, like he's the guy that I think needs the most out of anybody. And, it's just a case, again, where like, he's hurt and it's the head and it's the neurotrauma and it's deja vu all over again. And so I know there's a lot of discourse about whether he should hang it up now because he's just too hurt. And I agree that, being hurt is a problem.
Yeah, she's not happy about it either.
Not happy about it either. But at the same time, it is his choice if he wants to keep going. But I think there has to be a lot of concern and issue in Miami. Like, yeah, Thompson will be the guy that takes the reins. They want to bring in a veteran quarterback. That's fine. But for the future of Miami, and again, like even before the concussion, he did not look good this game. Buffalo had interest for him all the time. So again, is that bevy of talent worth it if he can't stay on the field consistently and can't give you consistent play performances every single week in, week out? I don't know. So it's unfortunate. It's a case where it wasn't like the Dolphins' fault, like the last big concussion we talked about, where like they put him on the field right after that last game and it was just bad decision making. This is just an unfortunate incident where I forget who it was that said it. If it was a second earlier that he started the slide, he wouldn't have been injured. But because he's still trying to figure out how to run the way that he can run, he's hurt and he's going to be out for a bit. And again, Dolphins, they were ticketed for bigger things this time around. Not the case right now because of this. And Buffalo's 2-0. Who saw that coming? I don't know. I don't really see it coming.
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah.
What a start to the season.
Why Justin is leading our pick challenge standings, obviously.
What was projected to be a down season for Buffalo on all accounts, they're getting to start out 2-0. Now there's 15 more games to go. But the Buffalo Bills have started out in a really good way, and there's still blemishes to this team. There's still flaws to this team. And I'm sure some of the teams that they're going to face in the coming weeks will be able to expose some of those flaws. But all credit to the Bills. They've started out 2-0. Because like you said, even before what happened at the end, like this didn't happen in a close game. This was a blowout far before what the unfortunate circumstance that occurred was. This defense, I got to give credit. The defense in the second half of the Cardinals game and then consistently in this Dolphins game has performed really well. I think that was one of the concerns for this team when you think about the questions of who's going to give you pass rush when some of the guys that you're relying on, like you need certain guys to step up and some guys are a bit too old. Von Miller. The linebacking core without Milano, relatively fine so far. And the defensive secondary, like interceptions, they're doing their job right now. So credit in the world to Buffalo and the fact that they're up 2-0, but just a rough way that game ultimately had to end, because obviously that's been the topic of conversation over the last 24 plus hours, and it's going to continue to be the topic of conversation. It's going to be brought up multiple times, and when like both of you have mentioned, we're not going to get a quick answer to this. This is going to be something that takes several weeks, I think, to manifest into what the decision making will be, and it's going to be something to talk about whatever the decision is. If Tua does end up deciding to maybe just walk away from it, it'll be us having to talk about what the missed potential of him was. Or if he does choose to continue, it's then putting it to an extent on him, but also putting it back on the Dolphins of like, what are you going to do to avoid this situation happening again? Because this would be the 5th time. If it happens again, God forbid it. Seriously. It would be the 5th time that this would occur. And how many more of those shots to the head can you take? It's just disappointing for Tua, disappointing for the team, to say the very least. And all that. I know we've kind of gone a bit back and forth now with the topics, but Justin, do you want to say anything? You've given your 2 cents on the Tua situation, but do you want to give anything about the Bills before we continue on here to the pick challenge?
The Bills look like a much more balanced team than they used to. I think that the run game has come on strong, which is finally something that they had been working on for a number of years. The secondary looks better than I think a lot of people thought they would. But I'm not sure they faced a real test yet. So we'll see what happens maybe next week. I don't know who they're playing next week. But
I can pull that up here in a moment for us. The Buffalo Bills in week 3 will be taking on Jacksonville. And then after that, Baltimore, and after that, Texas. All right, they're actually going to get some real games here.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see what they're made of soon.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, that's fair. And yeah, like I think Justin kind of mentioned earlier, it's like I don't think it's both necessary nor appropriate for us to try to give our 2 cents on what Tua should do, because at the end of the day, you said it, Justin, the 3 of us, we're not doctors, we're not prognosticators, we're also not in the inner circle of a guy that's ever been through this. So it's just one of those things where we'll wait to see what happens, and it's hoping that whatever decision gets made, there's been plenty of thought put into it, and that it's not just a knee-jerk whatever, like this gets made, this choice. So we'll see what happens for the long term in that situation. But an unfortunate story that ended up popping up in a Thursday night football game there, ladies and gents. So that moves. There's no easy way to transition out of that, but it is now time for the hashtag SAOC pick challenge, the weekly segment here on the show, now going into season 3. And we're here because it is between Rick, Justin, and I, and picking NFL games. We also have a mascot every single season that joins the affair. Basically, what happens, ladies and gentlemen, is the 3 of us go through the slate of games in an upcoming week, and we decide to pick winners based on a 4-to-1 point scale of confidence, basically. 4 being the pick we're the most confident in, 1 being the pick we have the least amount of confidence in actually happening in. But, I mean, we're still picking it. We believe in some way, shape, or form it's going to happen. The picks themselves are made based off of who's favored going into the game, which is how we have the basis of who's favored and who is a potential upset pick going into the matchup. All 3 of us are required to pick at least 1 upset game in our slate, and the lowest it could be is the 2-point matchup there, so it can be no lower than that. And of course, the lines that we are given for these games are brought to us by our friends at
ESPN Bet.
And I believe the last thing to note is the fact that we can pick a tie if we do so choose, and I'm sure there's probably going to be a game here in the coming weeks that'll merit one of us taking that chance. But we can pick a tie if we want. The tie must be used with your 4-pointer, and yeah, that's a requirement. But to equal that out, you do get it upgraded to a 5-point pick with the tie. So here's that. All right, I think I've said my piece. Podfather was also pulling off fathering duties.
Yes.
Do you want to update the people on the standings before we go with the picks?
I'd love to, and I'm in my kitchen now because we're upstairs. It was a little warm downstairs for the pod daughter here, so we're upstairs now. Thank you. Yes, I left our mascot downstairs because he thrives in the heat of the fire pits of hell, so it's okay.
I was going to say the heat of battle, but okay.
Yes, Justin was a game off of a perfect week to start off last week. If it wasn't for Denver not doing their job against Seattle, you would have had a perfect week. But you lead the pick challenge standings with 8 points going into week 2. So congratulations for that. As mentioned previously, you did lead last year after week 1. So, we'll see how that goes for you. Not a good week for Jurg and myself because the Gopher is in second place.
Yeah.
Utah finished with 5 points last week. Wins came with Houston and Tampa for Utah, the Gopher. Jurg had a win last week. It was the 2-point game, New Orleans over Carolina. I mean, come on. That's great. So that's 2 for you. And I had a imperfect week. So our punishments for picking a 0-point week. As we've talked about, the fall menu from Dunkin' has not set in yet, but when it does, I'll be sure to get a nice pumpkin muffin or pumpkin cream cheese on a bagel and be a terrible New Yorker and eat that, and maybe have some horrible iced coffee with it as well. It is horrendous, but that's what happens when you don't pick up a winning team. This week, however, I am picking a winning team. I am saying this right now. 4-point pick. Houston over Chicago, because the Bears have not scored an offensive touchdown at all, and the Texans are my Super Bowl or bust team. Give me the Texans over Chicago. They're laying 6.5. I'll take it. Houston with the 4-point win for me this week.
I did not expect Chargers Panthers to still be on the board because I thought that's where you were going. But
because you know what? I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about the Chargers.
Really?
Their offense was slow to get started, and if anybody knows how to lose a game, it's the guy who was on the 1-15 Panthers and 0-1. It was Harbaugh. So I'm not picking them. Yeah.
What a loss it would be for the Chargers if they did lose to the Panthers.
Yeah.
I mean, the Panthers lost Derek Brown. That defensive line is going to be struggling. So I'll take that risk. I'll pick the Chargers over the Panthers for my 4-pointer.
I'm going to go with the 49ers. I don't care that Christian McCaffrey is hurt. I don't think that the Vikings are better than the Jets. Maybe on offense, but certainly not on defense. So we'll see how that game plays out for the Vikings. I think they're going to be a rough 1-1. And the Vikings go up 2-0. Oh, I get a second pick.
Yeah, we do a snake format, by the way.
Yeah.
And then as my 3-point pick, I think I'm going to go with the Ravens.
Come on.
Yeah.
Adrenaline in his soul, etc., from there.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, by the way, real quick, actually, for context for the people, there's an even game spread as we are making our picks. Rams Cardinals is an even spread.
It fell down to even. Okay, because when I looked this morning, it was -1 for Arizona. So
wow. So the line has changed there. So context there, ladies and gentlemen. If you pick an even game, cool. It doesn't count as an upset. So the even you could only Rick and I have our 3-point picks left, but we could pick that as a 3, but it would not count as an upset because there's nobody going into it. So there's that. Is there an earthquake happening in Long Island?
No, it's almost noon, so that's the fire alarm in Williston Park going off, I think.
Fair enough. All right. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. Like the spread being this close, I am kind of worried, but like this team should still win this game. I'll do you boys the favor, and neither of you have to end up bad luck cursing your team. It'll just end up being me. But give me the Jets with my 3-point pick. So,
Justin, what do you always say? What do you always say?
You don't bet on the Jets, winning or losing.
That's true. But Jurg is not like us, so it's okay. All right, so
I'm not a Jets fan, so I won't get the curse.
Well, you'll still get a curse, but I don't know. 3 points and 2 points to me here. I'll have to pick an upset in one of these 2 games. Fortunately, one of the upsets that I have, because I only picked 3 going into this week. Only one of them is still on the board, and I'm avoiding it, thank goodness. So I am going to take my 3-point pick, and with that 3-point pick, I don't necessarily believe in this hype, so I'm going to take Seattle over New England at 3 points. I don't necessarily believe that the Patriots won that game. I have a verifiable source who was at the Bengals game last week who said the Bengals lost that game, which the Patriots won that game.
Horrible.
Thank you. Horrible. Yep. So that's going to happen there. And now for my 2-pointer, has to be an upset. So I'm tossing up between one of 2 upset picks here. Because my third one I'm not touching because I don't know. I think I know why I had this as an upset, but I'm not touching it. So it's either between my school or my wife. And I'm going to pick my wife. Giants over the Commanders is an upset pick of 2 here. I was going to go with Malik Willis and Liberty over Indianapolis, but I'm not doing that. So
I'll do that then. I will go with the Packers over the Colts for an upset because it's realistically it's the upset I'd be the most confident in. Because here's the thing: if Bo Nix had did a little bit better in week 1, I would maybe consider the Steelers-Broncos line. But the thing is that he just didn't. Now, granted, again, Pittsburgh is notorious for struggling when it comes to its West Coast games in Denver and against the Raiders. I can't just say in Vegas because they've only been there for a few years, so it's used to be in Oakland. But the Steelers are notorious for struggling with their West Coast slate sometimes. It wouldn't surprise me if the Steelers lost this game, but the defense is just at a higher level compared to Bo Nix right now. Like, TJ Watt and co should not, like, even if the offense isn't firing on all cylinders, that shouldn't be enough for them to lose the game necessarily. So my 2-point pick, I have the Packers over the Colts because I think Josh Jacobs could do some real damage if they give him the ball there, and Jaden Reed too with some, like, they could do some trick plays. He got 33 yards on a carry. You could do more. So I have the Packers there. So Justin,
trying to make sure that the fire alarm is not going off anymore.
No, you're good. So Justin has back-to-back picks here, his 2-pointer and his 1-pointer.
So unfortunately, Justin has to do an upset still. So he is going to go a little spicy here.
Okay.
And I am going to pick a notoriously slow starting team to overcome.
Well, I know what you're picking.
and to make the AFC spicy, because let's face it, it's always between these 3 teams when they're healthy.
He's picking the Bengals.
I'm picking the Bengals to beat.
I did not want to touch that game.
Kansas City. God. I did not want to touch that game either. Kansas City should win that game.
I probably would have picked the Chiefs, honestly, if you dropped by 1 point.
Yeah.
It is an unhealthy Bengals team, but they always seem to match up well, no matter what they do.
So. They're unhealthy, but remember, Jamar Chase said they're the best team in the league.
Because I always go with what a wide receiver has to say. I mean, at that point, Chase Claypool is still a top 3 receiver.
Oh, no, come on.
And for my 1-point pick.
I mean, Chase Claypool might be a top 3 receiver in the Arena League next season.
For the Iowa Woo? Absolutely.
Did someone pick Steelers-Broncos game?
No, we were talking about it. But
I talked about it, but neither of us picked it.
I would have loved to pick it, but I'm sure you're going to take it anyways.
All right. In that case, I think I'm going to pick the Eagles.
Oh, okay.
Over the Falcons. I'm very tempted by that game. I've been preaching it all week to everyone that asks me, but I'm hesitating today. I'm going with the Eagles. And you know why? I think it's just because the Eagles are a better team. I'm more confident in picking a better team in a worse matchup than I am with a wild card team with a quarterback like Justin Fields, who could throw 2 interceptions and cost them the game in a low-scoring 12-9 game.
More than fair. More than fair. Which one did one of you pick the Texans-Bears game already? Was it Rick?
Me. 4 points.
4-pointer?
Yeah, the first game picked.
So, Jared, what you have left is Dallas, New Orleans.
Yep.
Detroit, Tampa.
Yep.
Cleveland, Jacksonville. Arizona, Rams.
Okay.
Pittsburgh, Denver.
God.
So I'll tell you, I thought about Dallas and Detroit for those games, but those lines are so big that it's scary a little bit. Like
now, once again, for context for the people, we're just picking outright winners. We are not necessarily picking for the lines here.
That's true. That's true. I do have one pool though that the win loss is by spread.
Right.
So like that Dallas New Orleans game, if Dallas wins by 5, I'll lose because I picked Dallas. Stupid, but whatever. I don't know, man.
I can't believe I'm saying this.
Pick them. Pick them. Do it.
Am I going to rely on one of my greatest NFL enemies to help me get a point here?
Trent Baalke?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, def taxes and try to stay away from Trent Baalke games.
Oh, that's what you were going with, anyways.
Because I'm torn between 2 games. I'm torn between Rams Cardinals, and I'm torn between Saints Cowboys. Dude, the Cowboys always have a loss in the first 4 weeks every season that make you scratch your head.
Yeah.
And I know, obviously, their offense is better than what the Panthers' offense was. And it's also better than what we saw from them against Cleveland last week. But is there something to the Saints? Because Chris Olave only had 2 catches in the first game. And the Cowboys' secondary is not necessarily 100% healthy. I don't know, Justin. Riddle me this: what do you think of my top 2 choices right now? Rams, Cardinals, and Saints, Cowboys.
I like the Cardinals, but I think that Cooper Kupp is still there,
right?
So it's going to be a closer game than people think.
And it feels like the Rams relatively are pretty good in what feels like must-win games for themselves.
It's in LA.
No, it's in Arizona. But are the Cardinals really that kind of team where home field advantage would make that much of a difference for the Rams?
Well, but that's the question, though.
Yes.
The question is, which team can you see going 0-2 to start the year? And if
Technically, both of them.
well, I mean, which team can you see it happening to more
Right.
likely? And if you have that one, then go with the other opposite.
Yeah, it's tough. I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm gonna go with the Saints for my 1 point pick.
Whoa!
For a double upset, spectacular with my 2 and my 1 pointer.
Okay.
I'm picking Dennis Allen to win football games. What is happening this year?
So just to
I
clarify,
had Carolina win.
Just to clarify, by that logic, you're telling me that your beef with Trent Baalke and your beef with Ryan Tannehill, whatever team he decides to go to, is more prevalent than your beef with Dennis Allen.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
because here's the thing, no, like Ryan Tannehill for a good 5 years was propped up to be something he was not.
That's true.
Whereas Dennis Allen, like getting a second chance as a head coach, like I could critique that, but we know it's going to come to an end.
I was going to say, Justin, we now have a tiered rankings list of Jurg's hatred.
Yeah.
So
nice. Baalke and Tannehill are like S tier. Dennis Allen is more like B to C tier.
Charles Leclerc is somewhere around there too.
No, he is. I love Charles. No, he's not on there. McLaren as a whole might end up being on this tier list because they're pissing me off.
Yep.
Shailene Woodley is probably B tier for the memes that is.
Yep, of course. Jimmy Butler's on there for some reason.
He'll be on there if he does end up requesting a trade.
Yep.
The Heat
Tyler Harrow will find his way to the list for some reason.
Oh, he's already on the A tier.
Okay. There you go.
He annoys me.
Yeah. While you're continuing on this run here, now
I need to get cut out so I can actually make a tier list of hatred.
Yeah, no, you do that. I will take Pittsburgh over Denver as my 1 pointer. Something about that matchup of the rookie quarterback versus that Steelers defense is just way too good to pass up at this 1 point option. So that's going to be my choice there. So there you go. And now I'm just going on to the picks for he's here. He's here. Justin's worst enemy, second place team. He's here. God help us all. So actually, and we're doing this via the very old-fashioned wheel spin on the phone. So it's all legitimate and real.
There we are.
So in true fashion, it's going to be only 3 games because the Thursday night game happened, and so we got rid of that. So the picks for our mascot are Rams over Cardinals at 3. Apparently, he said, "Jurg, you're a wuss," and didn't want to take this game. I don't know. Tampa Bay over Detroit at 2 because Gophers over Lions.
Okay.
And Cleveland over Jacksonville at 1 because apparently he said he has a Deshaun Watson jersey somewhere in storage. So, a Clemson jersey, I guess, but still.
Why is there always something with every single one of these mascots?
Listen, they're evil. I don't know what to tell you. I have a guy. They're evil. I don't know. They're cursed. Anywho's, let's go with our recap of the pick standings, because I look like the judge from The Natural and the blinds and the sun, I guess. I don't know. It's a lot cooler up in the kitchen. So, Justin, our current points leader. San Francisco over Minnesota at 4. Baltimore over Vegas at 3. Cincinnati and your upset pick over Kansas City at 2. And Philadelphia over Atlanta at 1. Second place from last week is the Gopher. So Rams over Cardinals at 3. Tampa over Detroit, the upset pick at 2. And Cleveland over Jacksonville at 1. Jurg, Chargers over Carolina at 4. Jets over Tennessee at 3. Green Bay, the upset over Indianapolis at 2. Maybe Malik Willis gets his first NFL win, but and New Orleans over Dallas at 1, and then a surprising 1 point upset. And myself needing to get back to relevance here, the defending champion with 0 points to my name. Houston over Chicago at 4. Seattle over New England at 3. The Giants in an upset over Washington at 2. And Pittsburgh over Denver at 1. So we all go for the last possible upset choice, and Jurg adds 1 more to be funny. So there you go. That's the week.
Yeah, basically. So, that being said, the picks have been made, the games have been analyzed, and we will have plenty more to talk about on next week's edition of the show. And it's time for the final segment, one of the fan favorites of all time of the show. Rantin' Rick's Rostrum Podium. Podfather, as I always say, take us home.
Okay, so today's list will have a football theme to it for a couple of the options here. Starting with number 3, it's time to roast the Jets social media team because I don't know if you saw their most recent post and what they were asking. Social media tries to be a little fancy and try to be a little fun with what they like to do and the haha pics and all that. Nobody wants to hear Aaron Rodgers answer the question of whether or not Lightning McQueen has car insurance or life insurance. Nobody cares. First of all, stupid question. The answer is clearly car insurance. And second of all, why are you asking this of NFL guys who lost a bad game last week who need to get back into the training room and do their job? Why are we trying to play this or that? The worst possible game you could ever do with an NFL quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, because the answer is always ayahuasca. Let's be honest here. That's always the answer. So, do better, Jets social media team. Thank you very much for that. Number 2, on the topic of Carolina being as terrible as they are, I have 5 words for Roger Goodell. Bring relegation into your league. The Panthers deserve to be relegated to a minor league, the UFL. Bring up Birmingham, make them the team that replaces Carolina, because we need relegation. We need punishment for the owners who are terrible at their jobs and who don't put good products on the field. I'm looking at you, Chicago White Sox, as well. Get careful. You're going to be relegated to AAA at this point because you're 33 and 115 now? Be better. Be better at your jobs. And number 1, the summer is almost over. And so with the summer being over, I think it's time to ask a very important question to a very important person. God, why the hell are spotted lanternflies a thing? They are annoying, they are disgusting, and I enjoy thoroughly squishing them with my size 13 foot. I enjoy it. But was that their purpose on this earth, to ruin trees and to have me just squish them? I think we could do better. If you want to call them the spotted Adam Rank fly, that's fine. Call them that, because that at least gives me something to do. But otherwise, why? Were these two really on the ark at the end of the Bible or whatever it was? Come on now. Why are spotted lanternflies a thing, people? And I think everyone agrees with me. Why are they a thing? They're disgusting. Get them out of here. Make them so I'll make you a trade, God. I will trade you the rights to bring the dodo back into existence, or the peregrine falcon, and you can take the spotted lanternfly and the mosquito. Take them both. Get them out of here. Bring back the dodo. We all want to see the dodo back in existence.
Can we make that deal? Can we please make that deal?
Yeah, make that a deal. Deal or no deal.
Oh my God. So with that being said, another rant podium come and gone. We're now trying to make biblical trades with extinct species, which I'm honestly all for.
I'm for it too.
So we have that. And we'll have much more of that to talk about next week, ladies and gentlemen, on the edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, coming at you in about a week's time or so, give or take, depending on how all our schedules align. But in all seriousness, week 1 was fun. Week 2 went off to a bit of a bumpy start with that Dolphins-Bills game. We'll see what the results of week 2 give us. Who will be leading in the championship after this upcoming week? Will probably be Justin. Yeah. But can Rick and I make any headway, and can we just make sure we can avoid being behind the gopher by next week? Because I don't want to be behind that mascot for a majority of the season when it comes to the pick.
I'm behind him right now, and it's terrifying.
So all our picks and more to come on next week's edition of the show that always brings you fun football and plenty of chaos. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll see you all next time.